The movie starts with Sarah walking through a lobby, lost in her thoughts. She runs into Derry, her friend and colleague, and they exchange the usual small talk. Derry is curious about how Sarah's date went last night, but Sarah shrugs it off. She skipped out again. Says she just can't vibe with the guys in the city, and Derry can't quite wrap her head around why Sarah feels that way. Sarah had shared this old family recipe with Derry, and now Derry can't stop talking about how good it was. Sarah, a bit on the serious side, tells her to keep it hush-hush because it's a family secret. Derry thanks her and wishes her luck on her big pitch coming up. Later, Sarah runs into her boss, Rick Lever. They do the usual greetings, and Rick asks her how the Brooks Beauty pitch is coming along. Sarah says she's got it covered, but Rick kind of throws in that he took a big chance on her with this one and hopes she doesn't mess it up. Sarah just gives him this look, like she's disappointed, almost as if she's thinking Rick should trust her more. Sarah's back at her desk when her dad, Frank, calls. He's asking her to cover for him in a meeting with a client who's interested in buying their family farm. Frank and her brother Caleb are off on some vacation and can't make it. Sarah's not exactly thrilled. She's got a lot on her plate at work. They agreed she'll meet the client next week instead. Sarah's a bit uneasy about it. She hasn't been back home in a while, and she's not sure what to make of that. So, Sarah has to go ask Rick for the time off, and Rick's all good with it and tells her to go sort it out quickly. He jokes that she shouldn't fall in love while she's back home, and Sarah just laughs it off, saying that's not gonna happen. Sarah starts conversing with the cab driver on the way back. She shares memories of growing up in the town, remembering how she used to hang around her family a lot. She never really got into grape harvesting though. Nostalgia hits her when she finally gets to the family house and is so wrapped up in the moment that she doesn't even notice when her shawl slips off. Gabe walks up behind Sarah and picks up the shawl. Sarah, startled, turns to see him. She doesn't recognize him, and he introduces himself, explaining that he's been checking Frank's mail as a favor. Gabe mentions that he's just moved back to town and lives next door with his brother Ben. Before he heads off, Gabe tells Sarah that he'll let the developer know she's arrived. Sarah goes inside the house and admires the renovations. She finds her mom's old recipe book on the shelf. Without thinking, she picks it up to refresh her memory. A noise from the yard takes her outside where she finds a girl, Mabel, swinging on a makeshift swing tied to the grape tree that Sarah and her mom once planted. Mabel introduces herself, casually mentioning that Ben, Gabe's brother, is her dad. It is the first time Sarah has heard about Ben. She's intrigued by Mabel's knowledge of the grape tree, especially when Mabel starts sharing fun facts about grapes, showing Sarah around the farm. Mabel proudly shows Sarah the grape seeds she keeps in her bag, explaining that she uses them to make anti-aging creams. Just then, Gabe's voice calls out from a distance. Mabel whispers to Sarah, asking her to keep quiet about her unsupervised swing session. Gabe joins them, mentioning that their crops were ruined, and Sarah expresses her sympathy. He wishes Sarah a successful harvest and casually asks when she plans to pick the grapes. Sarah admits she has no clue how to manage a grape harvest. She's just here to meet with the developer. Gabe points out that the grapes are ready. He offers his help if she ever needs a hand on the farm. Sarah calls her dad and updates him on the situation, relaying that the grapes are ripe for picking. Not wanting to cut Frank's vacation short, Sarah promises to figure out the harvest all on her own. She spends part of the evening researching grape harvesting techniques, determined to handle it herself. Mabel chimes in, saying she'll help with the harvest if they get half of the grapes in return. Gabe and Ben try to brush off Mabel's suggestion, but Sarah is definitely sold on the idea. They're selling the place anyway, so it's only fair they make a deal. Sarah mentions there are miles of vines to handle, but the others are up for it. They make breakfast to get some energy for the work ahead. They get ready to head out, and Mabel notices Sarah doesn't have the proper attire on. Sarah doesn't think much of it, but Mabel warns her that harvesting grapes is a messy business. She can't be out there in her regular clothes. Sarah didn't bring any farm gear and decided to head to the local shop with Mabel and Gabe to grab some clothes. At the shop, Mabel runs off while Sarah and Gabe talk about how sweet Mabel is, how she's always been into the farm. Gabe asks why he hasn't seen Sarah around town, and Sarah explains that she left right after her mom passed away. She just couldn't handle being there without her mom. Gabe figures out that his family only bought their farm after Sarah had already left town, which explains why they've never crossed paths before. Sarah also realizes Gabe is back now to help with his family farm. They both admit they feel guilty for leaving. It's like they both have something to make up for. They walk into the shop and see Mabel has already picked out some clothes for Sarah. They all help her choose, and before long, they are done. Out on the farm, everyone's ready to start harvesting. Gabe gives Sarah a tool and asks if she knows how to use it. Sarah says she can handle it, but when she starts, Gabe steps in to correct her position. Sarah pushes back a little, thinking she's fine, but she nearly loses her balance and Gabe catches her before she falls. Sarah thanks him, then tosses the grape into the bucket. Gabe stops her, explaining that throwing the grapes can bruise them. He goes on about how careful you have to be when harvesting, and it's clear Sarah's feeling a bit overwhelmed. Gabe then picks a grape and hands it to Sarah, saying she should try the first taste of the harvest. Sarah bites into it and really enjoys the flavor. She asks Gabe if he has any flour since she couldn't find any at her house. She's eager to try her mom's special apple tort now that she's got the recipe book back. Gabe agrees to give her some flour, but jokes that she'll owe him one. Sarah laughs, saying her baking skills are mostly just for fun, something she does on weekends. Gabe asks if she spends weekends with her boyfriend, and Sarah replies that she doesn't have one. Right then, Mabel shows up. Mabel comes over with her bucket full of grapes and asks how much they've picked. She sees their buckets are still empty. They all decide to sort out what Mabel has picked after lunch. Mabel goes off to get aprons from her dad, and she tells Ben she likes Sarah and thinks Gabe does too. Ben tells her not to worry about such stuff. While making dinner, Sarah tells Gabe she likes how he looks out for Mabel. Gabe grins, visibly proud that he's a good uncle. Sarah admits Gabe is not like the guys she usually meets. Most of them are boring and not fun at all. Gabe remarks he's always the one keeping things lively. Sarah then thinks of an idea. She wants to surprise her dad with one more harvest party before selling the farm. She feels it would mean a lot to him, especially if it's a surprise. Gabe offers to help her set up the party. On the farm, they start planning. Sarah asks how long the harvesting will take, and Gabe tells her it'll take about a week. Sarah looks worried since she has a pitch due next Monday. She wants to make her dad happy, but she also needs to keep her job. Gabe assures her not to stress as he believes things will work out. His family is ready to help her. Later on, Sarah is trying to focus on her pitch when someone knocks on the door. Gabe is at the door with the flour she asked for, so she invites him in. Curious, Sarah asks Gabe if he always wanted to be a farmer. Gabe nods. He likes providing something that makes people happy, like wine. Sarah then admits she's finding it hard to concentrate on her work. Gabe suggests she try a few things that usually help him clear his mind, like taking a walk, though he points out it's already dark, so maybe not tonight. Sarah mentions she bakes to clear her mind. She picked it up from her mom, who did it all the time. As soon as the oven rings, she always seems to find the answer she's looking for. Gabe hands over the flour, their hands touch, and they both pause, holding on to that moment just a bit longer than usual. Gabe is flustered and pulls away, stating he should get going now. When he leaves, Sarah gets back to baking, following her mom's recipe, guided by it. When she pulls the tort out of the oven, her face brightens. She whispers to herself that she's found the solution she needed, and now she can finally get some sleep. By morning, Sarah notices Gabe is up early. She cuts a slice of the apple tort and heads outside to bring it to him, but stops when she sees him talking with Allison. Curious, she watches from a distance, wondering who Allison is. Gabe thanks Allison for bringing over a casserole, and Allison says she'll be back later in the week to pick up the dish. She praises Gabe and Ben for their hard work before leaving. From where she's standing, Sarah quickly ducks back inside, assuming that Allison must be Gabe's girlfriend. Sarah calls Derry to check on things at work. Rick is starting to get nervous about her being away. Sarah reassures her, though, that she's handling some important stuff. Sarah even jokes that she's actually having fun with the farming thing. Right after Sarah hangs up the call, there's a knock at the door. It's Allison, and she's there because Gabe told her about Sarah's plan to throw a party for Frank. Allison tries to step inside, but Sarah hesitates and stops her. Sarah isn't in a welcoming mood, wanting to know why Allison is there. Allison responds that Sarah might need some help. She's known for being the best party planner in town and has worked with Frank on such events before, so she knows how to handle them. Sarah lets Allison inside and offers her a piece of the apple tort. Allison takes a bite and is immediately blown away. She comments on how delicious the torte is and then suggests that Sarah should enter the tort in the upcoming town festival. Sarah hesitates and mentions that the festival is only a few days away, and the deadline for entries has already passed. Allison tells her not to worry, saying she's in charge of organizing the competition and can easily add Sarah's name to the list. They spend some time working on plans for the party. Before Allison leaves, she promises to add Sarah to the competition, but Sarah insists she doesn't have to go through all that trouble. Sarah explains she's got a lot on her plate already, but Allison insists on helping anyway. Later on, Mabel and Gabe head over to Sarah's farm to help with the day's harvest, and they meet up with Walter, who Gabe had invited to join them. A short while later, Sarah comes out to join the group. Gabe suggests teaming up with Sarah for the harvest, but Sarah decides she'd rather work with Walter, saying she wants to get to know him better. Gabe takes it in stride and goes along with it. Gabe and Mabel are busy sorting grapes when Ben arrives. Ben praises Gabe's idea of bringing in Walter to help. Gabe says he's just trying to make sure Sarah doesn't miss her pitch day. Ben, seeing through his brother, tells Gabe the real truth, that he would rather have Sarah stay than leave. He points out how Gabe's behavior changes whenever Sarah is around. Mabel has been secretly listening and jumps in and agrees with her dad. She even tells Gabe he should just marry Sarah. Ben also encourages Gabe not to let someone like Sarah slip out of his hands. He tells Gabe that both he and Mabel like Sarah a lot, and she would be a great addition to their lives. Ben urges Gabe to stop hiding his feelings. Mabel then interrupts, reminding them they've got a lot of grapes left to harvest, so they need to get back to work. During their break, Walter finds a cornhole set and suggests they play while resting. As they're playing, Mabel and Gabe join in on the fun. While playing, Sarah talks about how intense grape harvesting is. She praises Gabe for helping her dad out in the past, wondering how they managed to handle such a big farm with just a few people. Walter corrects her. They usually have a much larger crew to help. Just as Sarah suggests that they bring in the crew, the team shows up, catching her by surprise. Gabe arranged for them to come. Sarah feels overwhelmed with gratitude. She thanks the crew for showing up and offers to pay them once the harvest is done, but they politely decline. They explain that Frank has always been good to them, and they owe Gabe too. The next day, Sarah calls Rick to let him know she won't be coming back on the day they had planned. Rick expresses concern because it's risky that she travels back just a day before her pitch. Sarah insists that she has things that need handling at home. Rick shares his worries, but Sarah reassures him that everything will be fine. Just when the call ends, Ethan arrives. Sarah called him over to let him know she needed more time before finalizing the deal. Ethan reminds her that they plan to start work right away, but he agrees to give her more time. He asks her to get back to him as soon as she's ready to move forward. Later, Sarah and Gabe are in the wine press, working together. Gabe compliments her on her potential as a farmer, and then invites her to join him for a walk by the lake. As they stroll, Gabe mentions that the grape harvest will be finished by tomorrow and asks if she's looking forward to her pitch. Sarah admits she's not excited, but she does love her job. Sarah's favorite part about her job is her colleagues. When they reach the lake, Gabe shares that it's his secret spot, somewhere he comes to relax and sort through his thoughts. He tells Sarah it's special to him because it's where his parents had their first kiss. Sarah asks what the latest thing he's been working through at the lake, but Gabe keeps it to himself, saying it doesn't matter and that he's learned to focus on what's truly important. A quiet moment follows, filled with unsaid words between them. Sarah soon breaks the silence by suggesting that they head back. Gabe agrees. On their way back, Gabe thanks Sarah for being so kind and loving with Mabel. He starts off that she'll be missed by everyone, but quickly backtracks that Mabel will miss her. But it's clear he's trying to hide that he might miss her too. Sarah feels she's the one who should be grateful. She can't imagine how she would have managed all the harvesting on her own. She mentions that Gabe and his family are doing all this for her dad, but Gabe doesn't agree. He starts to say it's not really about Frank, but before he can finish, Allison shows up. Allison hands Sarah the festival entry form and lets them know that everything is set for the event. Gabe praises Allison's dedication and thanks her for all her hard work. Allison soon leaves, but not without reminding Sarah to save her a slice of apple tort. Sarah informs Gabe that Allison convinced her to enter the competition. He smiles and tells her that Mabel entered too, but she entered in a different category. Mabel has created a new face cream. Gabe notices that Sarah seems a little off and asks if she's okay. Sarah insists she's fine. Gabe says it's time for him to head home and make dinner for Mabel. They say goodnight, and Gabe heads back. Later on, Sarah is on the phone with Derry, and Derry is eager to hear about Gabe. Sarah tells her Gabe is a good guy, but he might have a girlfriend. Derry quickly changes the topic. Rick asked her to work on the pitch in case Sarah couldn't make it. She turned it down, but Sarah encourages her to do whatever she thinks is best. After hanging up, Sarah gets a text from Gabe asking her to come outside. When she steps out, she finds flowers on her porch, the same ones she and Gabe had talked about before. Sarah likes the gesture, but wonders if Gabe is sending mixed signals. The next day is the festival. Gabe and Mabel pick up Sarah, then they both drive there together. Sarah sees Allison and compliments her on how great she looks. Mabel suggests that Sarah and Gabe set up their spots near each other, and Allison agrees. The judges make their rounds, and soon it's time to announce the winners. Mabel wins for the best beauty product. Gabe takes the prize for the best wine, and Sarah is thrilled to win for the best dessert. They're all excited, each taking home a $500 prize. After the festival, Gabe drops Sarah at her house before driving away. When she goes inside, she finds Frank and Caleb are already there, and she's happy to see them. Inside, Sarah realizes she must have left her phone at the festival. She figures Allison probably found it and hopes she'll bring it by when she visits Gabe. Frank and Caleb are glad to see Sarah, and Caleb jokes that maybe Gabe has something to do with her good mood. Sarah tells them it's not just about Gabe. She's been enjoying the peace of being back home. Later, Frank asks about the progress of the farm sale. Sarah says she hasn't signed the papers yet because she wants to be sure it's really what Frank wants. Frank explains that he's ready to retire, and since Caleb doesn't want to take over the farm, selling seems like the only option. Frank thanks Sarah for doing such a good job handling the farm. He also points out that she keeps mentioning Gabe a lot. Sarah brushes it off, saying Gabe's been nice to her, but that's all there is to it. Meanwhile, Ben is seen talking with Gabe about Sarah, urging him to tell her how he feels before she heads back to the city. Later, Gabe catches up with Sarah after Frank and Caleb drive into town. Sarah asks Gabe to call Allison and check if her phone has been found because she needs it to book her flight for the next day. This reminds Gabe that Sarah is leaving soon. Sarah goes on about how important it is for her to nail the pitch since it could get her closer to becoming a partner at her company. Gabe, who had been wanting to say something important, instead tells her he just wanted to congratulate her on winning at the festival, though it's clear that's not what he really wanted to say. As Gabe turns to leave, there's an awkward silence between them, like there's so much they both want to express but are holding back. That evening, Allison stops by to return Sarah's phone. Sarah notices that Allison seems down and asks what's wrong. Allison admits she's struggling with her feelings about a certain guy and isn't sure if she should tell him how she feels. Sarah gives her some encouraging words, and Allison decides she'll go ahead and be honest with the guy. She tells Sarah that any guy who dates her would be lucky. After Allison leaves, Caleb comes over and Sarah vents her frustrations. She tells him she's worried she might lose her job. She hasn't signed the deal papers yet, and she's afraid she's losing the one guy she really likes to someone else. She adds that she doesn't want to lose the farm either because it's the last piece of their mom she has left. Sarah talks to Caleb about the peace she's felt since returning home. Caleb guesses that the guy she likes is Gabe, and Sarah admits it's true. She says she hasn't told Gabe how she feels because she thinks Allison is involved with him. Sarah then turns the question around, asking Caleb if he's seeing anyone. Caleb says he's not, but he does have his eye on someone, although he thinks she's out of his league. They both encourage each other, reassuring themselves that things will work out. Later that night, Allison meets up with Gabe. Allison had pushed Gabe earlier to confess his feelings to Sarah, but Gabe tells her he couldn't bring himself to do it. He explains that Sarah has her life back in the city, and he doesn't want to make things complicated for her. Gabe also urges Allison to tell Caleb how she feels. The day of Frank's last harvest party arrives, and preparations are in full swing. Allison and Caleb keep crossing paths, both clearly nervous. Allison finally builds up the courage to talk to Caleb. She tells Sarah she's going to have a word with him, and Sarah starts to piece together that maybe Caleb is the guy Allison had been talking about earlier. Mabel then confirms to Sarah that Allison has always had a crush on Caleb. But before Allison can fully express herself, Caleb makes the first move and asks her out. Both of them are thrilled and relieved. Sarah suddenly realizes she has some unfinished business to handle. She texts Ethan to come by and pick up some papers. After handing the papers over to Ethan, she calls Rick to let him know she's sent an email with everything he and Derry need for the pitch. She reassures him it's all covered and then heads back to the party. Sarah finds Gabe and asks him to take a walk with her back to the lake he had shown her before. At the lake, Sarah opens up to Gabe, admitting she thought he and Allison had something going on, and Gabe laughs, brushing it off as a misunderstanding. Sarah tells Gabe she's sent her pitch to her boss along with her resignation letter. She explains that coming back home has made her realize she doesn't want to leave her family behind again. Gabe is happy but concerned, and asks if she's really thought it through. But Sarah's mind is set. Gabe finally confesses that he's been thinking about a future with her ever since they first met. Sarah smiles and then admits she feels the same way. Plus, staying is the right choice. The couple seal their love with a kiss. Sarah gathers everyone to thank them for their love, support, and kindness. She's chosen to stay in town for good. The crowd cheers and the couple share another kiss.